Hello and welcome to my library tour. I know when I'm looking at BookTube or even anyone on TV, if there's a set of bookshelves behind them, I'm just looking like this because I'm trying to read the titles on the books. So to save you from a sore neck, I'm going to actually show you the books now. Most of my books are going to be about creativity, visual art, poetry, spirituality, media and humour, and sometimes a mix of most of the above. So let's start top shelf. These are, you're going to see a lot of creative books because I teach creative writing online. First thing, Daily Rituals, Women at Work, Mason Curry. It's about how women find the time in the past to be very, very creative. People like Dorothy Parker, Coco Chanel, Nina Simone, Frida Kahlo, Charlotte Bronte. Literally when did they go to bed, when did they get up, how did they manage to eat, how did they manage to cater for their household. Very practical, little short stories, short pieces about each author. When you read this, you want to make things and you know how you can make the time to do it. So brilliant. Next book, also fabulous for creatives, The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron. There are a gazillion slightly different manifestations of this book for people of different age groups. The Artist's Way for people of a certain age, The Artist's Way for sort of teenagers, for later in life, all sorts of different things. But the basic stuff works. It should be available in any library near you and well worth getting. And it's an exercise book as well. It explains about how to be creative, what stops you doing that, and gives you practical things to do. Absolutely invaluable. If there's one book you want to read on how to be more creative, this is probably it. Next book, Teaching Creative Reading, Helen Stockton, and that's a handbook I've looked at for how to do what I do, teaching creative writing. Likewise, the Creative Writing Course book, edited by Julia Bell. Advice to Writers by John Winokur. This has been a website and also at one point it was a Facebook page, although I think it's been put in pause. Lots of little snappy quotes, advice to writers from other writers. Interesting, engaging, practical, makes you think. Making the Cat Laugh by Lynn Truss. Lynn Truss is a British humorist and is pant-wettingly funny. And she also lives on her own with cats and is extremely funny. Yeah, just need to read her. On the other scale, Tuesdays with Maury, Mitch Albom. It's been a bestseller and it's about a very high-flying, sporty journalist who connects with an older professor and starts to make time to visit him once a week. And the old professor's full of wisdom about life. So it's not fictional, it's non-fiction. Tuesdays with Maury. Very helpful, very interesting, lots of wisdom, and written in a very accessible way. Very, very short. Postcard stories by Jan Carson. They literally are what can be written on the back of a postcard. And during the pandemic, she made herself available to write to people who felt they needed something in the post to cheer them up. And did that. I have a friend of mine who did request one for her mother who'd recently been bereaved. And sure enough, Jan sent her a story in the back of a postcard. This is something I encourage my students to do. I think it's a very doable creative writing practice. And Jan Carson is currently up for a French Literature Award for one of her books. So, one to watch. Anne Morrow Lindbergh, married to Charles Lindbergh, famous flyer. This is a book which is called Gift from the Sea. Very small, this particular edition. She simply took some time out to go to a beach in New England. I think it was for about a week, and wrote about life based on looking at shells and what was on the sea. But it's very, very accessible to anybody at all, and small, quick to read. Mary Schmick, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, wrote Even the Terrible Things Seem Beautiful to Me Now, but she's actually more famous for writing the lyrics to songs Sunscreen, and it was simply a normal journal article for her, writing in the local newspaper, but it was taken by Baz Luhrmann and turned into video, and the rest is history. You will have heard the lyrics. Mary Carr, Art of Memoir, is a classic on how to write memoir, and when I say that, I mean in a very evocative way. The stories she had to tell of her own life were quite hair-raising, and you can almost get PTSD from reading this. There's parts of it that are overwhelming, but she certainly has it down how to write a memoir in a way that is evocative. And if you want to write a misery memoir, so to speak, if you've had unfortunately a lifetime of difficulty, she will tell you how to write it in such a way that other people will feel your pain and be interested possibly as well. Julian of Norwich, Revelations of Divine Love, is one of the first books written in English by a woman, and they are a near-death experience she had, and in that she felt that she met Christ and that he gave her revelations, to say, of divine love. And she's famous for the saying, all will be well and all manner of things will be well. That was kind of one of her main sayings. And she lived in a particularly turbulent time, so she wasn't saying that lightly. Whenever she was living, there was plague going on around her. So, Julian of Norwich. More light-hearted, Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen. I'm currently devising a little workshop on writing from looking at Jane Austen and learning from her, so I obviously have to be reading a few Jane Austen books again. Next, Haunted by Christ, Modern Writers and the Struggle for Faith by Richard Harries. And there's a list inside of the writers. I'll just see if I can show you, because it's varied. It's not only people who are Christians and writers, but those who have railed against religion. So we've got Dostoevsky, Emily Dickinson, Gerard Manley Hopkins, Edward Thomas, T.S. Eliot, Stevie Smith, Samuel Beckett, W.H. Auden, William Golding, R.S. Thomas, Edwin Muir and George Mackay Brown, Elizabeth Jennings, Graham Greene, Flannery O'Connor, Shusaku Endo and Evelyn Waugh, C.S. Lewis and Philip Pullman, Marilyn Robinson. So, and if that's not enough books to get you reading, how about this? The Year of Reading Dangerously by Andy Miller. He also co-runs a podcast called Backlisted, which is well worth catching, where each week they will go to a classic book and discuss it and read it. Very accessible. Read a book a week and be well read in a year by Kenneth McLeish is interesting because it has a book that's recommended, and then if you like that, you might like this. Or if you even want to pretend that you've read the book and you haven't, that would give you enough information. Brilliant Careers, the Virago book of 20th century fiction, edited by Ali Smith. Lots of recommendations for women writers if you want to get more women writers on your reading list. The Creative Call, an Artist's Response to the Way of the Spirit by Janice Elsheimer. So this is a kind of Christian version of The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Similarly, Creating a Life Worth Living, a practical course in career design for artists, innovators and others aspiring to a creative life by Carol Lloyd. Word on the Street by Time Out are little comments that are heard allegedly on buses and so forth in London. Ridiculous and outrageous and possibly not true, who knows. But anyway, for example, that's not a selfie, that's my mum. So there we go. The Art of Spiritual Writing by Vanita Hampton Wright. She is a well-known editor as well as a Christian writer herself. The Art of, I'm going to say that again because a large bus went past. The Art of Spiritual Writing by Vanita Hampton Wright, a Christian writer and an editor herself. Very professional, but insightful and spiritual as well. Small book, quick to read, and one I recommend to people who feel they're wanting to write a book. Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg is a total classic for creative writing, freeing the writer within. Very accessible, like she's speaking over your shoulder and just saying it like it is, somebody with you. Kim Adonizio, Ordinary Genius, a guide for the poet writing within, is pretty similar but in poetry, and again quite accessible but thought-provoking. Small Practical, Edit Yourself, a manual for everyone who works with words by Bruce Ross-Larson, a classic. Small, quick to read, a good reference. Steal Like an Artist, Austen Cleon, a classic. Full of pictures, friendly to look at. Let me see if I can just show you. And his jam is basically fine poetry, where you would take a newspaper and block out some words and then rearrange them to be like poetry. Julia Cameron, The Sound of Paper, Inspiration and Practical Guidance for Starting the Creative Process. So it's a slight adaptation of The Artist's Way to make it more applicable solely to writers. So, recommended. Books versus Cigarettes by George Orwell. I just came across this article about the last year. Brilliant. He sits down and works out how much money people spend on cigarettes and beer and how much it costs to buy books and read. And you have to transfer the figures because he's talking about it in at a time whenever you have to factor in that everything now costs a heck of a lot more. And when you work it out and find out what he spent in books, it's quite a lot, but he makes a good case for it. Stephen Fry Paperweight, a collection of his articles. Extremely funny, great company, written for The Listener a while ago, which is to do with our BBC radio. And one of the funniest is where he broke into his school careers room and looked up his own file to see what people were recommended he should be. What he said was, I want to be a careers advisor to the careers advisor. And on his file, the teacher had written, comedian, huh? And that was prophetic. Stephen Fry did indeed become a comedian. But he tells the story better than I do. Love and Salt, A Spiritual Friendship, Shared in Letters by Amy Andrews and Jessica Messman Griffith. Brilliant for anyone interested in writing correspondence or just reading. A really interesting discussion between two friends on their spiritual questions and also emotionally what they're doing in their life and how they feel. They're smart people and they're also going through things like pregnancies and so forth. It's a good one. Very readable. Nora Ephron, I Remember Nothing. Hilarious. It's some more of her thoughtful articles. Memorable, especially for a list at the back, which is where she is facing dying, and she's saying about things that she loves. And one of them is Pride and Prejudice itself. One of them is taking a bath, coming over the bridge to Manhattan, and pie. Love it. Very distinctive. This book I recommend for anybody who's thinking that they want to get feedback on the writing and struggling. This is called The Writing and Critique Group Survival Guide by Becky Levine. How to give and receive feedback, self-edit and make revisions. And it's about how to set up a group where you listen to each other's work, and it gives you examples of what to look for in different genres and also the ins and outs of the personal clashes and so forth that can happen. and how to keep a group running well and functionally. Fantastic. A Syllable of Water, 20 Writers of Faith Reflect on Their Art, edited by Emily Griffin. Brilliant. It crosses the genres, including poetry as well as prose, non-fiction. Very good book. Gifted to me by a friend. Roger's Thesaurus, where if you have a word in mind but you don't want to use it again or it seems a bit boring, you find an alternative very quickly. And Jane Austen, Sense and Sensibility.